Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance Sexton.
Good to be here.
Lance. John Riosti, American Banker. John, thank you so much for joining us. I really want to know what's going on in Washington because I have no clue. So let's start with you.
No change. The only thing to report is Congress is coming back. So obviously they can't do anything when they're not in session, but now they'll be in session. And later this week, there'll be a hearing of the House Small Business Committee, and the Mr. Ware will testify, the Inspector General.
Regarding?
He'll testify about management challenges, what he sees as management challenges for 2022, and also the review of 2021 in the past few years, what he's found.
What day is that, John?
That is Wednesday.
Okay.
I believe it starts at 10 a.m. and they'll stream it, so it is.
They'll stream it also. They have it recorded 10 a.m. Eastern, I
Yes.
assume.
Yes.
Those are interesting. We will have it taped. Actually, we will figure out how to splice a little stream of that, and we will have that on. But those are always interesting. And I imagine what the Inspector General does, John and Lance, is they do every 6 months, they do the top 10 challenges for SBA.
Yes.
It's always informative. The things that affect us, obviously, it's always we need to have a loan broker central registration. Credit Elser was up there for a while. Lance, I think that's dropped off the radar. But they really want to know about agents, concerned about the agents, concerned about LSPs, credit, obviously underserved markets, and there's always IT issues. And anyway, it's interesting. So it'll be interesting to see what's important. And what I like about that, John, also it telegraphs what is important to the lawmakers who drive this program. And that's something we don't get a lot. We get a lot of documentation from SBA, but we don't have the original source material. Well,
I'm interested myself to see what they say with regard to IT. I know there's been upgrades for 7A and sort of the major programs, but I was surprised at some of the hearings. I mean, hearing some of the people who run or participate in the less publicly forward programs, SBIC in particular, how backwards those systems are. That they're running these. I remember one fund manager saying that they're running SBIC essentially on Microsoft Excel, things like that. So I'll be interested to see, just having heard that, what he says about that, and maybe what he says about disaster relief lending. And I mean disaster relief in the conventional sense, not PPP and anything earth-shattering like that, because there was a representative at the last hearing that the House Financial Services Committee held, where they talked about 7A, who talked about disaster lending and the potential for allowing private participation, lender participation in that. So,
i.e., interesting. In other words, where the lender would fund the disaster loan directly, similar to a la PPP.
I think she talked about exporting a PPP type model into standard, I guess, call it conventional disaster relief lending.
That's something Lance and I, John, I think you and I have had conversations about that. I'm 100% in support of that. You have this entire infrastructure. And that is something lenders, hey, guess what? They're in the community. They're in the community that the disaster has hit. It's their friends, their neighbors, themselves, and they want to help. And they're willing to do whatever it takes to help. And then they got an infrastructure. I think that's a great idea, John.
Yeah. In the past, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
I was just going to say, if you followed the PPP model with standard disaster loans, you get the money into the hands of people that need it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who would be against that. We've certainly learned, obviously, the naysayers will say fraud, 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 but there's fraud everywhere. And I think the second round of PPP, we're getting better at identifying that and solving those issues. Where are we on this came up, and I know Lance and I have talked about this, John. There's a movement to basically make everyone a 7A lender if they have some type of lending license. And the historical concern is there are 14 entities like that. Fountainhead is one of them where they have a specialized license. And the reason why SBA has clamped that down is because Fountainhead isn't regulated, and the SBA has to come in and do that. John, where are we on that, and do you see that as gaining traction?
Well, there is a bill in Congress right now, and I know that the non-bank lenders are lobbying.
Well, of
so
course.
They're actively lobbying. It will be tough to gain traction because from what I have seen, none of the I call them the principals, the chairman of the various committees. In the House case, it would be Chairwoman Velasquez. In the Senate case, Chairman Cardin. None of them have come out in favor of it. I don't know if any of the ranking members have come out in favor of it. I just haven't heard a lot of support outside of the people you would expect to support it, which are the non-bank lenders who really.
Well, John, you just brought up an article for American Banker, which said that there was a non-bank lender that you covered. Yes. That is focusing in that $18,000 to $25,000 niche. Tell us about that.
Well, that's a situation. It's sort of apples and oranges to the discussion we've just been having because they are partnering with a bank, with Northeast Bank in Maine, and Northeast will be the lender of record, I guess, so to speak. But the private company, the fintech, which is named Newity, will be doing the underwriting and the origination and all of that. They during PPP, they bought a lot of loans. This is the outfit that was formerly known as ACAP SME. So they bought well over 100,000 loans, 115,000 loans. They have that they either purchased or originated, again, in partnership with Northeast. So they have that ready-made market. And they want to partner with the other banks where the banks would, lenders, I guess I should say, not always, I'm sure perhaps they would partner with credit unions as well. But anyway, the lenders would refer clients, small dollar clients who they, for whatever reason, choose not to serve to Newity. And so that's how that would work. So you have that with the partnership. But I think the fintech lenders want to do it on their own. They want to get past this 14, the 14 licenses. They want to open it up. They don't necessarily want to have a partner.
Well, I think part of the challenge with that is everybody on this call works in the SBA industry, and it's a specialized area of lending, and it takes a deep understanding of SBA. So while fintechs had some success with PPP, I almost feel like they have to partner with a participant lender to get the expertise necessary to properly do SBA lending. Because it's not PPP, PPP is no guarantee, no collateral, very limited underwriting guidelines, where regular SBA lending is completely different. So I think that, yes, we need to get out and serve the underserved markets, but I think a smart transition would be partnering, if fintechs were to be involved, partnering those fintechs with existing SBA lenders, like John
It's very interesting that you said that the chairmen of the ranking members are not. Well, I'm not saying they're not supporting, but their name isn't on it, and the chairman and the ranking members tend to be have a higher level of knowledge of what's going on, simply because they have the staff to do the analysis. So, John, I think that's very telling in terms of what probably will not happen if I can go there.
But I would be the last person to try to predict. I actually predicted our last show what may happen with direct lending, and which I think just myself that it may pass like on a 51-50 vote as a discrete part of a totally different budget package than the one that has currently run into a stone wall on Capitol Hill, because the things that have bothered Senator Manchin don't include SBA direct lending. So it may well be that could pass. So people have to be.
Please are watching it fascinating now. I love it. You have every senator can be king.
Well, there's no question that if it does pass, it would probably pass with 0 Republican votes, and I don't know if there's any Democrats who particularly object to that. So,
well, it's such a minor part of the budget. They're not going to fall on their sword for it. But
I wonder. The thing there's the point you brought up with regard to additional non-bank lenders about supervision. SBA doesn't have much supervisory capacity right now, and I just wonder, from a sort of a free market perspective, why don't they partner with the agencies that have lots of supervisory capacity, which is FDIC, the Federal Reserve, the OCC. They have lots of supervisory capacity, and I don't know if anybody's ever brought this up or if it's been discussed. But why reinvent the wheel within SBA when you have these agencies who, through their responsibility for banks, are already looking at SBA loans.
Lance, softball view.
Well, the FDIC, OCC, and other regulatory agencies historically have not really understood SBA lending. And John, I've in my past have done a lot of training with FDIC in that regards. And, even if we think back to the last recession when banks were closing left and right, FDIC would have to go out and find people like me to come in and deal with SBA portfolios and closed institutions. So not to say that they couldn't do it, but it would take a little time to transition their thought process.
John, what's interesting, the question you pose, we've talked to SBA. SBA poses the same question. They understand that. They're not in a vacuum.
Right. Obviously, the big drawback is none of those non-bank lenders are banks, so it would be tough to figure out a way to say get OCC to be able to.
And they've been burnt by non-bank lenders in the past, and that's their concern. So they've teamed up. What was it? Farm Credit Administration, Lance? They've teamed up with them to do the audits for non-bank lenders and other entities. So that is a concern. But also buried in the budget, buried in all of this money last year, there was a lot of money set aside for Inspector General as well as for capital access for reviews. So they have the budget to do that. Hey, let's shift the Anthony. Who wants to go ahead, Lance. I'll let you.
Well, I think that
more of a comment. But
I work for a non-bank lender. We go through frequent reviews and audits by SBA and other audit teams. So the current group of 14 go through pretty significant review. Whether or not SBA would have the capacity, I just think about the fintechs. The fintechs took PPP from moving along to significant volume. You can't apply that same. I mean, could you imagine all of a sudden if there were millions of SBA loans originated by fintechs? I don't think they're going to dip their toe in. They're going to dive in full-fledged. So, I would have some concerns if you got a lot of additional. I mean, the current system works. And I would have some concern about unregulated lenders being involved in SBA.
Yeah. The direct answer to your question, Anthony, is SBA has those 14 non-bank lenders that we currently have on their radar. They are highly regulated, and they're not going to roll this out unless they feel they can extend that type of regulation to these non-bank lenders. I think
the current group of 14. Current group of 14 are required to have very seasoned SBA knowledgeable teams.
I imagine they'll just extend it all to the non-bank lenders.
Well, one other thing, and I'll say this real quick, if you look at the history of SBA the last few years and factor PPP out of the equation, because PPP is an anomaly, a gigantic anomaly. The way the business model was evolving was shifting as much of the operation to the banks and these 14 lenders who they trust as possible, and the actual size of SBA, the SBA operation, the number of employees, the budget for those employees outside of the credit function was declining. I mean, prior to 2021, the number of employees had gone down for several years, and the size of the budget to pay for those employees and everything had gone down. So, it was seemingly positioning itself as this lean, mean sort of, machine that churned out, tens of billions of loans through its partners. And
Right.
it was heavily reliant on the partners, but on the trusted partners. And I guess, obviously, supervision through either the banking regulators or the infrastructure at SBA is a big part of that.
John, I haven't heard it phrased like that. I think that's excellent in terms of trusted partner. That's why you have a 750.
Right.
And that means they trust you. And if you don't adhere to your side of the trust, bad things will happen, i.e. BankServe, i.e. BLX, i.e. Frank Dinsmore and Resource Capital. Things they have the ability to come in and dish up some pain. But I like the trust. Yeah. And that's, and
Well,
he's going to give you the trust, and you need not only earn it, but you need to keep that trust in good standing. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, and it's built into the SBA lending process. You get a 750 agreement. Guess what? You're not immediately a PLP or express lender.
Right.
You have to do some SBA lending for a while and show the ability to process, service, and liquidate SBA loans before you can become a delegated lender. So, what are they going to do with a fintech? Are they going to say, well, you've got to submit every application to SBA like every other SBA lender in their first year or two? Have to submit all their applications GP. Can you imagine what that would do to the processing center?
I think this is, it'd be fascinating to watch. Hey, I want to get to some of these questions. So Lance did a great webinar last week on 159 and post 912 processing. We had great questions from the crowd. This one, we picked out a couple of them from Connie. And what does each application mean, each service provided? Do we have it?
Well,
what's your best practice?
Yeah, each application in terms of the 159 means if there are fees charged to the borrower and they have more than one loan, that's each application, each loan. Whether or not you need to report, for instance, if one provider provides packaging and provides another service to the borrower, I don't think there's a problem with reporting both of those on the same 159.
There's nothing wrong with separate 159s.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Bob. To be careful, you can do separate, but if it's the same provider and they're providing a service on a individual application, I don't see a problem with putting both on the same 159.
John mentioned that he's following IT pretty closely. Lance, you're on the front rows of this. I'm going to ask you, you don't have to answer, but ETrans, if you could grade it. Let's see, Laura's asking, when will it be updated? Is it, Lance, what's your opinion, Lance?
Well, I am an
I give you the
ETrans.
softball now. This one's at the head, so be careful.
Yeah, I'm in ETrans about 10 hours a day. I've not, ETrans hasn't changed dramatically over the years, but it works. So I'm not having any problems. I know there's an update that's supposed to occur, but the ETrans system works. It's a little clunky and could be improved. I love the relationship SBA has with the developers of the direct portal, because the direct portal's been amazing. And I'm in it 10 hours a day. But ETrans works. It just could be improved.
Fair enough. Joey wants to know, can we charge a packaging fee as a lender and a separate doc prep fee that we charge our non-conventional loans, the same fee? Can we do
Well,
that?
packaging and doc prep basis to some extent are the same. No, you shouldn't have two separate charges. You should have it all included in the packaging fee.
John wants to know, is it okay to collect a deposit up front from the
Yes.
applicant for
You
appraisal,
can.
title, et cetera?
You can collect a good faith deposit for appraisals, title work, environmentals, and so forth.
Okay.
But it's just important to remember that you've got to if you don't approve and close loan, you got to refund the remaining balance.
We've had this conversation where lenders will say we want the $2,500 upfront packaging fee, and if we don't approve the loan, we only refund $1,000. Do you think that's a good practice, Lance?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that there's something that would keep you from doing that, Bob, but I don't like that.
It's not worth it. It's not worth it. Sandra wants to know, on extraordinary fees for construction, can the lender charge a fee if there is a monitoring company?
If you are doing construction monitoring and you collect the extraordinary servicing fee, there's nothing that would prohibit you from paying a monitoring company for doing it.
Very good. Mike follows up and says, do you have to provide any documentation for the extraordinary servicing fee?
Bob, I've never seen the extraordinary servicing fee reported because it's submitted, and this is one I'm not 100% certain on, Bob, and I would like to look in the SOP and just make sure, but the extraordinary servicing fee, you put that into ETrans, and once you get a loan number, it means it's approved. So the extraordinary servicing fee is reported when you put the loan into ETrans. Now, I want to double check, Mike, to make sure that you don't have to put that on a 159, but I don't think
My understanding is you don't. I don't
yeah, you don't have to.
Um,
I'm just, Bob, I'm 99.5% sure. I'm not 100% sure.
Crystal wants to know, what is the best practice for having the 159 signed? Do we do it at application? Do we do a prior loan documentation? Do we do it when we sign the loan documents? When do you want it signed, Lance?
Well, there's not an exact requirement, but I like to present the 159 to the borrower early in the process because you are required to let the borrower know that they don't have to pay for any fees related to their loan application that they don't want to. So giving them an opportunity to look at a rough draft 159, I think, is a smart thing. In terms of getting it executed, I'm certainly going to get it executed prior to the loan close.
Very good. Couple housekeeping notes. With Joseph being sick, we're going to have to move our secondary summit. We'll announce that next couple days. But I need him to produce that, and he's unavailable. The upcoming webinars, Lance is putting together a nice one on what about the unforgiven 20%, an update of what to do, which is going to be pretty exciting. For those of you in training, we were to have a meet and greet again. I need Joseph for that. We will be all getting emails on when that will start. Lance and I will do a 20-minute introduction. And Lance, I suspect we'll do that end of this week. Is that good for your schedule?
Okay. Yeah.
We'll let you know. I'm assuming we'll do it this week. John, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it. Lance, as always. And appreciate your support, everyone. Great numbers. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great afternoon.